Hey, listeners, the Health and Wealth Expo Virtual Summit is back. Join us on February 22nd, 2025. Visit healthandwealthexpos.com. And my subtitle, The Conscious and Unconscious Bias in Healthcare. What's happening in the government right now truly aligns with the bias that healthcare professionals deal with the bias with being overlooked for certain positions, with the bias that comes along with what we have to deal with being excluded from emails, being excluded from lunches, being excluded, and then being told like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot. Oh, you wasn't on that email? No, I wasn't on the email, and you know I wasn't on that email. And again, I'm just using an example, but this truly saddens me what I see happening right now. And for those of you who are clutching your pearls, who are saying like, oh, I really didn't think that he was going to do that, you knew because he said he was going to do it. So for those of you who are clutching your pearls and saying like, oh, I didn't really think he was going to do that, you knew because he said he was going to do it.
Welcome to Nurses with Voices. I'm Dr. Lendra, your host and fellow nurse who's traded in burnout for breakthroughs. I'm here to show you how to transform your nursing career into one filled with purpose, reduced stress, and incredible opportunities. Whether you're looking to start your own business, build generational wealth, or simply find a healthier role in nursing, this podcast is for you. Join me to explore practical strategies to overcome burnout, combat bias, and chart new paths in nursing. It's time to reclaim your voice and reimagine your future in healthcare. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of Nurses with Voices. I'm Dr. Lendra, and I want to talk about what's going on in the government right now. Now, I woke up this morning, and the first thing I heard was that the removal of DEI has been signed as an executive order. And I'm going to read you, because it's all over the news today. President Donald Trump has ordered that all U.S. government staffing working on diversity, equity, and inclusion schemes be put on immediate paid administrative leave. What is happening? Please, I really want to know your thoughts with this. And I want to know what you think about this. I want to know, what do you think about the removal of DEI? And I want to know what it means to you. I know what it means to me, but listen, it means something different to everyone. So maybe there's a reason that this has been allowed. Now, I know just because he signs it, it still has to go through Congress. And then people talk about how, well, some things at the federal level doesn't necessarily affect the state level. Listen, at the end of the day, you have to start thinking and considering the strategy behind what's going on. What's happening right now is nothing short, and I'm just going to be blunt, right? And I try to sugarcoat. We say things like burnout. No, don't say burnout. Say moral distress, right? Or we say incivility. We use those terms. No. Or we say diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't say, no, I'm going to call it what it is. It's discrimination. It's prejudice. It's discrimination, and it's flat out racism. That's what's happening right now. And I know I get myself in a lot of trouble because sometimes I don't have a filter. And this is why I am a business owner. This is one of the reasons why, because what I'm seeing right now, I can't stomach it. And I hear my pastor and Pastor Quick, I know you say, listen, yes, I am a woman of faith, but I do feel that I'm called to speak out and say the things that someone else won't say. And I know some people say you have to move in silence. Well, yeah, I know that too. It's nothing wrong with calling a spade a spade. And right now, what's happening is flat out racism. That's what it is. The fact that you have, and this is who we voted for. So, and to you Black men who voted for this man because you felt like your lives were so much better when he was a president, or because of your misogyny or whatever it was, this is who your president is. Now he's showing you who he is. Now, what do you have to say when your kid won't be able to get into, they have to go on their merit, right? Or anyone who gets anywhere has to go on their merit. You already have Mark Zuckerberg, right? Facebook CEO, perfect example, pulling out of DEI. Walmart, pulling out of DEI. So now you have people who are mentally challenged, disabled, who they can't get jobs. They were the greeters at the door, right? It gave them something to do. It gave them a job. It gave them a sense of purpose. You're taking that away from people. Not to say, the hundreds of thousands of children who are not going to get access to schools because guess what? It's going to be given to someone who wants to pad the pockets of these people who are at these Ivy League schools. So now the people who, and we'll say, they have to do their merit. We have our merit system, but we know it's a reason why the government had to be held accountable to have these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. So whether the person has merit or not, we know we're still going to get looked over. And again, we call it bias, right? Conscious and unconscious bias. No, what's happening right now is flat out racial discrimination. That's what's happening right now. And it saddens me. It saddens me that this is the world we live in. It saddens me that people are not being held accountable for the riots that took place on what's supposed to be sacred ground. This is the capital of Washington, D.C. And you mean to tell me the people climbing walls, you have people climbing walls, you have police officers, and I'm sorry, sometimes I laugh when I'm trying to hold back things that I'm trying to say, because none of what I'm saying is really funny right now. None of it is really comical. You guys know that Nurses with Voices is not a political podcast at all. But I also feel like this aligns with what I stand for when I talk about the situations and the things that I dealt with in my book, right? And my subtitle, The Conscious and Unconscious Bias in Healthcare. What's happening in the government right now truly aligns with the bias that healthcare professionals deal with the bias with being overlooked for certain positions, with the bias that comes along with what we have to deal with being excluded from emails, being excluded from lunches, being excluded, and then being told like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot. Oh, you wasn't on that email? No, I wasn't on the email, and I wasn't on that email. And again, I'm just using an example, but this truly saddens me, what I see happening right now. And for those of you who are clutching your pearls, who are saying like, oh, I really didn't think that he was going to do that. You knew, because he said he was going to do it. So for those of you who are clutching your pearls and saying like, oh, I didn't really think he was going to do that. You knew, because he said he was going to do it. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. But you would rather see this man in office as opposed to a very, very, very a Black woman who is well qualified to run office. You would rather see this man in office than see a well qualified woman of color in that seat. And it saddens me that the Democrats couldn't stand together long enough to make this so that something like this wouldn't happen. You turned on Biden in front of everyone, in front of the world. You guys turned on Biden. And it saddens me that they had to see, and they took that weakness and they ran with it. So you positioned vice president. She's still my vice president. You positioned Kamala Harris to fail. Your party did this. The Democratic Party did this. This is who I look to. You are a large part of the reason. So for everyone who was clutching their pearls, can't believe what he's doing, why? And especially, and it particularly saddens me for our Black men who voted for him, knowing what he was going to do and knowing what he stood for. Oh, well, I had more money in the bank when he was president. You know what I remember? I remember a whole pandemic. That's what I remember. I remember patients coming into the hospital, and one minute they're fine, and by 5 o'clock that evening, they're dead. That's what I remember. I remember us, United States, needing COVID tests, and this president sending them to Russia. That's what I remember. I remember a man telling other people to inject bleach into their vein and Lysol. That's what I remember. So for those of you who are saying you really didn't think that this was going to happen, it's happening. But my big question is, I want to know who's going to stand with me. Who's going to stand with me and build a community and a movement? Listen, the only thing we can do is we have to start our own movement. So now more than ever, we have to support our own businesses. We have to be one another's support. Think about how they boycotted the bus system. Right now, listen, I'm not trying to start any riots. I'm not trying to start and say, oh, don't support this business or don't support. No. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is, as a people, we really have to stay together, and we really have to support one another and support one another's businesses and support one another's ventures, and whether they're educational ventures. We need to be starting foundations. We need to be purchasing real estate. We need to be encouraging our children to know what the stock market looks like. We need to be educating them on investing, on home buying, what they need to do to get into colleges, get into multiple colleges. We really need to be encouraging our historical Black colleges, encouraging our Black kids to go to those historical Black colleges. Now, listen, some people may listen to this and may say like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that Dr. Lendra, no, Dr. Lendra is just had it up to here with the bias. When you start trying to erase history, these things were put in place for a reason. And the fact that this is being allowed to happen, it speaks volumes about our country. It speaks volumes about being an American. And I try not to watch too much news, but this morning it captured me, right? I mean, I'm getting ready for a United Way event, and I went. It was a nice event. And I was listening to Michael Fanone this morning. I was listening to him share his story, and for him to speak to how he feels so betrayed. And don't you get it? Wouldn't you feel betrayed if you were defending the Capitol? You're defending your company. You're defending the sacred grounds of the White House, and to get beaten by rioters and to get hospitalized and to then receive threats on your family when you were just doing your job. Go ahead. How do we think about it? As nurses, we don't like when family members come in and they become violent. Think about that. Think about how families come in and they become violent. They get upset, and nurses have lost their job. Nurses had to go out on disability because they've been hurt and had to lose their job. Same situation. Now you have a civil servant who his attacker was actually sent to jail, and now they were let free because the president feels like that was a peaceful protest. And this is who you voted for. So now we're going to undo the birthright. If you were born in the U.S., but your parents are foreigners, you're no longer a citizen. Isn't that like the 14th Amendment? What is happening in this country? I truly want to know what is happening in this country right now, and why are we allowing this to happen? But I'll tell you what I am going. I am going to get on fan base. I'm going to get on fan base. I'm going to get on, what's the other one? Willow. We have to start supporting each other's movement. And again, I know people say move in silence, but I have this podcast and I have this platform for a reason. And for the listeners, you have to, yes, move in silence, but I feel obligated to share my thoughts. And listen, these are my thoughts. They don't have to be your thoughts. These are my thoughts, and this is my podcast platform. And I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for tuning in to Nurses with Voices, because I am a nurse and I do have a voice. And one of the things that I always say, if we want to change something, we have to change it at the legislative level. But we want to make the right changes, and we want to make sure that the right changes are being put in place. And how we do that is we stick together. So I'm calling on all resources. I'm calling on anyone who is in support of a movement that is going to support diversity. And I get it. Listen, I'm not telling anyone to break any laws, right? But we need diversity. We have diversity for a reason. And it's not just about, making sure there's a percentage of this and a sprinkle of that here and in this position and that position. I'm talking about there needs to be diversity in work. And I said this on last week's episode. I said this on a previous episode. There needs to be diversity especially in positions of leadership. If you have, just like how we now have all Republicans, right? And again, I don't want to be political, but just like now how we all have, what is it? The far right. And how did they get to be determined as the right? They're Like, how did they be, and why? And why do Democrats have to be the left, right? I say all this to say we need people in the positions of their need, and this is why there needs to be diversity in the leadership realm. There needs to be diversity from the top down. And if we don't have that diversity, these are the type of things that occur, and these are the type of things that happen. And again, I must say, I am very, very for the men, the Black men who voted for this man. I am so disappointed in you. You come from a Black woman, and the fact that you know the history, I'm sure you know what your mother endured. I'm sure you know what your father endured. And for the men who come from Black women who voted for this man, and now this is who we voted for. He's making good on all his promises. And again, let's not clutch our pearls. But one thing that we can do is we can stand together, and we can start a movement. And listen, I'm calling on all my ladies. I'm calling on all my women. And I know women, we're tired of trying to, after with Kamala, we all got tired. And I get it. But what we do have to do, we do have to recognize that now is not the time to just throw up your hands. Now more than ever, we need to be doing exactly the things that I said. We need to be keeping our circles tight, expanding our networks, and being strategic and intentional about who we bring into our network so that we can grow and blossom and do it. Yes, listen, our predecessors did it. Our family members, they did it, right? We can too. We need to really start a movement that's going to support one another. Now with technology, like we got more things now than they ever did during Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, right? We got social media. And again, doesn't mean Facebook or Instagram, right? Like we don't have to use those platforms. There are other platforms that we can be looking at, and we should be. It's time for us to have a voice. It's time for us to take a stance. It's time for us to start a movement and really stick together. Nurses, we need to stick together. Listen, my women of color, we definitely need to stick together. We need to really stick together so that we can come up with solutions in efforts to move forward. And if anyone wants to contact me, info@nurseswithvoicespodcast.com. There will be more details to come. And again, these are the type of things that I talk about in my book. And listen, if you haven't grabbed yourself a copy, make sure you grab a copy of Confessions of a Nursing Executive. So in a previous episode, I talked about a chapter in my book that I refer to as constructive discharge. And I gave you examples of what I mean by constructive discharge and how the comment that was made, how it impacts our diversity and our trust, right? It impacts our leadership positions, and it impacts the trust of our community with their healthcare providers. This is what we talk about: bias, instability, and bias in healthcare, and it's really relatable to everything that's happening now in the country. So I was watching something, and I think it was on LinkedIn, and someone posted that now we're no longer with the World Health Organization. The United States has pulled out of that. Why would we pull out of the World Health Organization? So what's the thoughts behind that? And I'm curious to know your thoughts on being a part and pulling out of the World Health Organization. I'm curious to know your thoughts on that. And as we wrap up, and as we talk about people mentioning that they had more money in their pocket when Trump was in office, and I mentioned to you that what I remember a pandemic. That's what I remember. And I want to share with you what I mean. This is chapter 7 in my book, and the chapter is called COVID-19. Medical staff work tirelessly to care for the sick, often putting their health at risk. Despite implementing protocols such as personal protective equipment, frequent hand washing, and isolating infected patients, the virus continued to spread. The hospital resembled a war zone, with patients admitted one day and dead the next. Numerous cold blues and rapid responses were called throughout the day, leaving staff emotionally and physically drained. The morgue's limited capacity necessitated the use of a trailer outside of the hospital to store the deceased. A considerable number of healthcare workers fell victim to the virus, and one major factor exacerbating this was the severe deficiency in PPE. The hospital, like many others across the country, faced acute shortages of ventilators and essentially protective gear such as masks, gowns, and face shields. Healthcare workers, driven by their dedication and commitment, continue to serve on the front lines, even when their lives were at risk due to inadequate protection. Healthcare workers were forced to reuse gowns and masks. Now, this was actually something that the Department of Health, if they had seen you do that prior to COVID, you would probably be fired. And I say all this to say, that's what I remember. That's what I remember about that particular time. I remember, and I'll say this again, a president who sent COVID-19 testing supplies to Russia when we needed them here in America. So that's what I remember, right? Again, I say all this to say, there is a level of betrayal that you feel. And I know during the election, people were just sad and no one really wanted to talk about why they were sad. People knew why they were sad because it was just almost like a gloom and doom, like all over the country, right? People knew why we were sad, but no one was really talking about it. You know, people were talking about it, but it just tells you that the fact that, again, you would rather see someone like him in office as opposed to seeing a well-qualified woman of color in office, it truly, truly speaks volumes about our country. And some people may not agree with me, and you don't have to. And to the people who voted for him, and now he's taking away your birthright because your parents weren't born here, that's who you voted for. To the people who are in support of this, okay. I want to hear from the people who are not in support of this, because I want to not only be a voice for what is happening right now, I want to start a movement. And that part of that movement is just what I said. Some of the things that you can do, educate yourself. Make sure that you're getting your education, whether you're getting education in or out of school. And what I mean is, maybe your education is you starting a trade. Maybe you have a high school diploma and you want to start a trade. Well, guess what? Everyone needs a plumber. Everyone needs an electrician, right? You need to make sure that you are positioning yourself so that you are not falling victim to the lack of education, because we contrary to what some people may believe, we are very smart. We are very smart individuals. And when I say we, I mean Americans, because and if I'm saying it right, apparently Americans aren't too bright, and that's why we want to give jobs to other people. What I see a very smart country. I myself have a doctorate degree, and I am just, I'm humbled when I sit at tables with people with PhDs and DNPs, whether they look like me or not. It's very humbling to know, because everyone works, you worked for it and you achieved it, right? Some people's things are, some people's success is ascribed and some people achieve. I was one of the people who achieved. And you too can achieve along with your family. And for those of you with small ones who have younger children, and yes, listen, taking away DEI isn't the end of the world, but it is an end of a movement. And what do we need to do? We need to shift. A lot of things that I tell my mentees when I talk about shifting your mindset, cultivating a mindset, a growth mindset, that's what we need to do. It's time to cultivate a growth mindset. And if you don't know what that means, I need you to make sure that you look it up. You need to cultivate a growth mindset. And why this is fitting for me, because these are the type of topics that I speak about. I have a whole speaker page, drlendraspeaks.com, and it'll go through the topics that I talk about. And a lot of the topics that I talk about is diversity and inclusion, bias in healthcare, how to overcome it. And we need to really bridge those gaps. Even if it's just at the local level, we need to bridge those gaps. Right now, we see what's going on in the federal government. Let's see what happens, right? Let's see how far this actually goes. But in the meantime, I encourage you to start really positioning yourself for success, for your own success, and not depend on anyone else to give you any type of accolades. You need to start patting yourself on the back. You need to start looking at your small wins, whether your small win is graduating high school, whether your small win is graduating college, whether your small win is getting that position that you need, whether your small win is starting a business. You need to start looking at those small wins and build on them. And that's something that we're going to be talking about at the Health and Wealth Expo. The Health and Wealth Expo Virtual Summit is going to be taking place on February 22nd, 2025. And that's going to be all about starting a business, how to start a legal nurse consulting business, how to start an IV hydration business, how to start a mental health nurse practitioner business. And right now, mental health is such a hot topic. And it's reasons like this why mental health is so needed. So you nurse practitioners, you are so needed right now for mental health reasons. And listen, be encouraged to start your own practice. And we can work together as a community, as a nurse community, we can work together and do this. The other thing we're going to be talking about, government contracting. We're going to be talking about how to fund your business, grants. Take advantage of these things because you don't know what might be taken away. So taking advantage of them while you can. But you know what? Position yourself so that you won't have to worry about a grant. You don't have to worry about that. Position yourself. Start now. In our expo in May, it's going to be talking about similar things. Nurse business startup. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about real estate. Real estate will change your life. And some of us we just need one opportunity so that we can change our lives. Real estate will change your life. And like I said, some of us, we just need one opportunity. So listen, I say all this to say, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for really listening and allowing me to share with you my thoughts. And I'm sure over the next few weeks, I'm going to have more thoughts because I'm sure more is going to unfold. And as it continues to unfold, I will definitely be back and talk more about how all of this is, really what's going on in the country, how it affects us. Because guess what? Oh, and I think this is one of the things I was talking about before. The World Health Organization, we pulled out of there. That affects, what does that mean for our vaccines? What does that mean for our maternal health? What does any of this mean? And I'll read that to you. And this is a story from January 21st, 2025 from the World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization commented on the United States announcement for their intent to withdraw. Now, the World Health Organization regrets to announce that the United States of America intends to withdraw from the organization. The World Health Organization plays a crucial role in protecting the health and security of the world's people, including Americans, by addressing the root causes of diseases, building stronger health systems, and detecting, preventing, and responding to health emergencies, including disease outbreaks, often in dangerous places where others cannot go. The United States was a founding member of the World Health Organization in 1948 and has participated in shaping and governing the World Health Organization's work ever since, alongside 193 other member states, including through its active participation in the World Health Assembly. The WHO and the United States have saved countless lives and protected Americans and all people from health threats. Together, we ended smallpox, and together we have brought polio to the brink of eradication. American institutions have contributed to and benefited from memberships of the World Health Organization. And we withdraw from the World Health Organization. We have withdrawn from the World Health Organization. Someone please share with me what is happening right now. And I want to know who stands with me. Who's willing to speak? Comment. Listen, comment. I want to know. I want to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts. Tell me what else you want to know, because I will bring it to you. I will bring more information to you, because what's happening, you see how it affects healthcare. And this is why I'm talking about this today. What's happening right now in the government completely affects healthcare. when we're pulling out of major, major, major relationships. And for what? What scientific reason? What data? Is this data driven? Please help me to understand, why are we pulling out of this? Because someone told you that they're not why are we deciding to pull out of the World Health Organization? And if you try to look up anything about DEI, don't even worry about it, because it looks like it's been pulled down from the government website. So you can't even find, you're not even going to be able to find it, because those people have now been placed on paid leave. That was announced today. So listen, by the time you hear this recording, you'll probably already hear about this. And again, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know what you think, and you see how it affects healthcare. Listen, you are definitely welcome to log into Health and Wealth Expos with an S.com so that you can join us for the virtual summit taking place on February 22nd. Thank you guys so much. Until next time, make sure that you stay inspired, stay educated, and stay empowered.